So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Real Life Research Institute African Program. Welcome to our insightful and relevant webinar. My name is Rosaline Kwaramba from Zimbabwe. I serve as a research associate. I will be your co-moderator for this webinar session. So today's webinar session is about how conflict, aid cuts, and redefining of misinformation regarding Ebola responses in DRC. So this webinar attempts to answer a question why Ebola persists in the DRC despite decades of response experience, and also discuss how community perspectives and lived realities have revealed the social and cultural dynamics which continue to shape the transmission of the epidemic. So within the session, our main moderator is Mr. Che Emmanuel. Mr. Che Emmanuel is a community awareness advocate, a founder of AI OCAM, who is also a corporate investigator dedicated in advancing civic education, informed decision making, and suitable community development in Cameroon. Please do keep your mics on mute during the session up until you are able to reach the Q&A. As soon as you have a question, please use the chat box. If you want to use your mic, you can raise your hand and we will unmute you so that you can share your question or your comments. So over to Mr. Emmanuel.
All right, thank you very much, Rosaline. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Bienvenue à ce webinaire. Welcome to everyone, to all those who are joining us from all parts of the world. Well, today we are honored to have three distinguished experts joining us to share their perspectives on the evolving challenges of Ebola response in the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's going to be a bilingual session since we have audiences coming in from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and why not some other parts of the country, of the world as well. So we are going to be alternating from time to time. And so this is just to inform those who are English speaking and French speaking that from time to time, just if you hear the language change, just know we are trying to be considerate for everybody. So for in the absence of one of our speakers who is not yet present with us, we are going to start with one very distinguished gentleman in the name of Mr. Augustin Modekereza.
Yeah. Oui, on est là.
All right. Merci beaucoup. Bienvenue, Monsieur Augustin. J'espère que vous allez bien. Nous sommes vraiment très fiers de vous avoir parmi nous aujourd'hui. C'est un réel plaisir, en fait.
Oui, très bien, merci beaucoup.
OK. Bon, Monsieur Modekereza Kasenge est un enseignant universitaire, chercheur et expert en gouvernance locale basé en République démocratique du Congo. Avec plus de 15 ans d'expérience dans l'enseignement supérieur, la recherche, l'action humanitaire et la gestion des crises, notamment lors des épidémies d'Ebola et le choléra, il apporte une perspective unique sur les liens entre la santé publique, le conflit et la gouvernance. So in a resume, Mr. Augustin Modekereza Kasenge is a university lecturer, researcher, and governance expert from the Democratic Republic of Congo with extensive experience in humanitarian response, emergency management, and public health challenges, including Ebola outbreaks. He brings valuable insight into the interpretation of conflicts, governance and health systems in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Kasenge.
Merci beaucoup. C'est un honneur d'être là. Juste pour discuter avec vous sur la question de l'épidémie. En effet, la 17e épidémie d'Ebola a déclaré en République démocratique du Congo. J'ai préféré intituler cette présentation de la manière suivante. Épidémie d'Ebola en RDC, riposte en contexte de polycrise et instruments de pouvoir. Ceci étant, c'est parce que l'épidémie dont il est question survient dans un contexte d'enchevêtrement de crises. Il s'agit essentiellement de l'instabilité politique, de l'insécurité chronique, de la fragilité économique, de la tension diplomatique au niveau de la sous-région, sans oublier la réduction de l'aide humanitaire. Voilà un peu, toutes ces crises sont plus ou moins ou davantage en interaction, et ce qui rend davantage, un peu plus complexe la riposte en cours. Pourquoi je l'ai dit? Parce que cette interaction de crise participe même à l'infodémie, étant donné que les limites de la gestion de l'information compliquent la coordination de la riposte. En effet, on doit noter que ces crises, de par leurs origines historiques, de par le contexte économique qui est essentiellement un contexte de déprédation, voire également la fragilité des institutions en place et davantage la manipulation politique qui est très, très récurrente dans la région. Et donc, voilà un tout petit peu les contextes. Ça fait que même les contextes actuels invitent également les enjeux régionaux et internationaux majeurs dans ce débat. Pourquoi nous le disons? Parce que lorsque nous évaluons la dimension sanitaire, il s'y est de constater que depuis la déclaration de la 17e épidémie d'Ebola par l'OMS en tant qu'urgence internationale confirmée, il se dégage qu'il y a une autre communication qui a été faite par Africa CDC, identifiant finalement un certain nombre de pays qui seraient également menacés par la même crise. À notre niveau, nous pensons que c'est un aspect aussi qui pourrait rajouter à la méfiance entre certains pays de la sous-région ou de la région, si on parle de l'Afrique essentiellement, étant donné que 11 pays, c'est beaucoup de pays. Un autre élément qu'il importe de souligner au niveau sanitaire, c'est effectivement la nature du virus elle-même. C'est, selon les spécialistes, les virologues, il s'agit d'une souche appelée Bundibugyo. C'est un village en fait de l'Ouganda, mais qui est un virus qui n'a pas encore trouvé de vaccin ni de traitement homologué à ce jour. Voilà ce qui qui renforce la peur et pourquoi pas la frustration. Il importe de noter qu'à ce jour, cette épidémie est effectivement déclarée dans trois provinces de l'Est de la RDC. Et ces trois provinces sont substantiellement affectées par plusieurs crises, essentiellement les crises liées aux conflits armés, les catastrophes naturelles telles que les épidémies parce qu'elles sont très récurrentes et qu'en sais-je encore. Et à ces éléments s'ajoute également l'affaiblissement du système sanitaire congolais qui est secoué par le fait que l'on a assisté à des coupes budgétaires, à la redéfinition du financement de l'OMS, l'OMS qui est un acteur majeur qui vient en appui au système sanitaire en République démocratique du Congo. Vous vous souviendrez qu'avec le retrait des États-Unis de l'OMS, et voilà, il y avait l'USAID également qui était un acteur très, très, très impliqué dans la prise en charge ou dans l'appui au système congolais au niveau sanitaire. Finalement, la conséquence, entre autres conséquences, c'est qu'on trouve qu'en période de crise comme celle-ci, les relais communautaires sont souvent mobilisés, mais actuellement, avec les moyens qui ne suivent pas, ces relais communautaires sont démobilisés. Et pourtant, ces acteurs sont le premier maillon dans la chaîne de la riposte. Pourquoi ils sont un tout petit peu démobilisés? Parce que dans la politique sanitaire en République démocratique du Congo, c'est déjà qu'ils ne sont pas pris en charge de manière permanente. En fait, lorsqu'ils sont mobilisés, ils bénéficient des appuis ponctuels des partenaires de l'État au niveau étatique. Vous pouvez comprendre finalement à combien de fois leur démobilisation ou leur non-implication très, très effective contribue à ce que nous appelons infodémie. Parce que finalement, et c'est là toute la désinformation qui en découle. Oui, oui, infodémie. Donc, c'est là toute la désinformation. Et voilà. Au niveau sécuritaire, nous avons décrit le contexte dans lequel nous sommes en train d'évoluer comme un contexte qui est ravagé par plusieurs cas d'insécurité. Et à ce titre-là, l'insécurité devient finalement l'un des principaux freins à la riposte. Pourquoi nous le disons? Nous le disons parce qu'il y a plusieurs groupes armés qui équiment l'Est de la RDC. Et à ce titre-là, les milices locales limitent finalement l'accès aux soins. C'est déjà un problème, ou du moins l'évacuation de malades vers les centres de traitement. Nous avons noté également que la problématique finalement aussi des conflits armés fait que il n'y a pas de coordination unifiée contre la riposte. Ça veut dire qu'on trouve qu'au niveau de Kinshasa, il y a une partie affectée par la crise qui est gérée, qui est contrôlée par le gouvernement de Kinshasa, pendant qu'une autre partie est contrôlée par l'AFC M23. Il s'agit notamment d'une partie de la province du Sud Kivu et une partie de la province du Nord Kivu. Alors, comme vous le savez, les conflits armés provoquent également des déplacements de populations qui partent essentiellement vers les camps de déplacés. Et du coup, les camps de déplacés deviennent des foyers potentiels de la propagation rapide du virus. Il y a un autre élément qu'il importe de signaler au niveau de l'insécurité, c'est que la RDC a une grande partie, elle est une grande partie forestière. Et les groupes armés équiment ces forêts-là. Les forêts leur servent de base arrière. Ce qui participe finalement ou renforce les actes de braconnage, avec tous les risques finalement de consommer des animaux infectés, et notamment par les virus Ebola. Nous avons parlé de l'épidémie comme enjeu de pouvoir et comment finalement l'épidémie aujourd'hui pourrait être ou est perçue par nous chercheurs comme un instrument politique. Il s'agit essentiellement lorsqu'on analyse les discours des principaux partis au conflit. Kinshasa revendique la souveraineté sanitaire. Ça veut dire Kinshasa estime que le gouvernement de Kinshasa estime qu'il lui revient de prendre le lead et de discuter avec tous les acteurs, les partenaires qui interviennent au niveau sanitaire. Entre-temps, il accuse l'AFCM 23 d'entraver la riposte. De l'autre côté, on voit qu'il y a l'AFCM 23 qui accuse également le gouvernement de Kinshasa d'avoir participé à la faillite sanitaire au niveau institutionnel et ainsi de suite. Et du coup, il y a l'AFCM 23, lorsqu'on analyse, on trouve que cherche quand même à s'imposer comme une alternative à cette faillite sanitaire. Finalement, la santé devient un terrain de rivalité politique plutôt qu'un objectif commun pour les belligérants. Et voilà, dans ce contexte-là, chaque camp essaie de renforcer son pouvoir symbolique. C'est à ce titre-là que nous disons que, en fait, les conflits s'est déplacé du terrain essentiellement politique vers les secteurs sanitaires. Il n'y a pas que ça. Nous pouvons également, on peut également discuter des conflits qui sont souvent invisibilisés, surtout des conflits les acteurs de mise en œuvre de la riposte. Il s'agit lorsqu'on voit la concurrence en termes de positionnement, c'est des conflits qui sont invisibilisés, mais lorsqu'on analyse très bien, on trouve que c'est des comportements qui, à un moment donné, impactent le déroulement normal d'une riposte. Voilà un peu ce qu'on peut dire par rapport à ces points qui en lien avec la riposte ou l'Ebola, l'épidémie et en tant qu'instrument politique. Voilà également, on peut maintenant, lorsqu'on discute, on essaie d'analyser les volets économiques et sociaux qui est aussi affecté par les conflits et par ricochet par l'épidémie d'Ebola. Nous réalisons que il y a un effondrement économique et une vulnérabilité sociale. En effet, l'Est de la RDC, essentiellement les trois provinces, sont des provinces riches, on doit le dire, des provinces riches à des minéraux et ou à des ressources naturelles. Ce qui fait qu'on y assiste à l'exploitation illégale des ressources telles que l'or, le coltan, le bois, et c'est ce qui participe à un mouvement migratoire presque incontrôlé. Et dans ce contexte, il est possible finalement que ces mouvements soient un vecteur aussi de la propagation. Alors, le contexte dans certaines parties de ces provinces affectées est marqué également par le fait que les institutions financières ne sont pas opérationnelles. Depuis un temps, les banques ne fonctionnent pas. C'est ce qui fait qu'il n'y a pas suffisamment d'accès à la liquidité. Or, lorsqu'on n'a pas accès à la liquidité, c'est qu'il n'y a pas possibilité qu'on puisse s'approvisionner très rapidement en intrants pour engager la riposte. Voilà. Au niveau des infrastructures, il y a lieu également de signaler que à la suite des conflits, plusieurs infrastructures routières, essentiellement à l'est de la RDC, dans les provinces affectées, sont en état de délabrement très, très avancé. Et d'autres sont contrôlés par les porteurs d'armes. Ce qui fait que la logistique, à un moment donné, la logistique médicale est entravée. Voilà, on a sur la même lancée ce qu'on peut appeler une pauvreté et une inflation à grande échelle, si je n'exagère pas, parce que on trouve qu'il y a un chômage élevé, l'insécurité alimentaire, il y a l'agriculture qui est perturbée et davantage une dépendance à l'aide humanitaire. Alors, lorsque nous questionnons le volet diplomatique au niveau de la sous-région de Grand Lac, au niveau de la sous-région, nous constatons également que les conflits s'est déplacé un tout petit peu. L'épidémie devient finalement, accentue finalement les rivalités. C'est le cas où on trouve que entre Kinshasa et Kigali, la santé devient un terrain de rivalité. On trouve qu'il y a eu fermeture de frontières et comme mesure unilatérale, ce qui ne participe pas au processus du réchauffement de relations entre les deux pays. Dans les mêmes chapitres, on note que la communauté d'Afrique de l'Est n'arrive pas vraiment à assurer une coordination, à impliquer les acteurs pour coordonner de manière commune la riposte au niveau de frontières. Et donc, ce qui explique finalement que la surveillance transfrontalière n'est pas très efficace au vu de méfiance des uns envers les autres. Voilà. Mais qu'est-ce que nous pouvons alors faire? Et là, nous sommes au niveau de ce que nous sommes en train de proposer comme stratégie. Nous estimons que l'on peut quand même œuvrer pour la diplomatie sanitaire et une collaboration régionale. Et cela peut permettre la neutralisation des tensions qui peut passer à travers l'instauration de mécanismes de dialogue sanitaire pour éviter que finalement une épidémie ne serve d'instrumentalisation politique. Et voilà. Nous estimons en plus que il est possible avec le partenaire qui appuie les secteurs sanitaires, notamment l'OMS, pour qu'on puisse renforcer son financement, possibilité de discuter avec l'USAID et voir comment mobiliser de nouveaux acteurs ou les nouveaux bailleurs. Finalement, nous pensons que la coopération reste aussi un levier finalement très important pour faire que la lutte contre Ebola serve de moteur de solidarité régionale plutôt qu'un terrain de rivalité. Voilà un peu. Bref, nous pensons que analyser la question d'Ebola et la riposte ne devrait plus se faire de manière isolée des autres crises existantes qui l'impactent et qui l'aggravent par ailleurs. Mais nous suggérons qu'il y ait une approche intégrée, sanitaire, sécuritaire, économique et diplomatique. Et pour finir, en tant que chercheur, je constate que la situation actuelle ouvre deux pistes de recherche. La première, c'est de dire qu'il est possible qu'on mène une recherche socio-anthropologique pour comprendre quelles sont les ontologies locales par rapport à Ebola. Ça veut dire qu'est-ce que les gens pensent, qu'est-ce que les gens, pour les populations locales affectées par l'Ebola. Ebola, c'est quoi? Et ça pourrait donner des informations qui pourraient soutenir finalement l'action dans les jours à venir. Et enfin, c'est voir aussi dans quelle mesure ce que j'ai qualifié de conflits invisibilisés entre les acteurs de mise en œuvre de la riposte par rapport à la concurrence des positionnements, ou lorsque l'on perçoit une situation d'épidémie comme une occasion ou un espace d'accumulation de ressources, on peut aussi questionner, on peut mener une recherche et voir dans quelle mesure de tels comportements impactent la riposte. Voilà ce que j'avais à partager avec vous. Et encore une fois, c'est un honneur pour moi de participer à ces. Je reste très attentif et merci pour votre attention. Je vous remercie.
Hello, merci. Thank you very much, Mr. Kasenge. Please, let's put our hands together for Mr. Kasenge. Ladies and gentlemen, I think during his presentation, by the way, he had a very, very insightful presentation. And during his presentation, I saw a lot of people actually commenting, saying they cannot hear French, the one who translated and all of that. Like in the beginning, I rightly said in the beginning that it's a bilingual session. And in this bilingual session, we're going to be hearing he is actually the only French-speaking presenter, but let's not be surprised that at the end of this session, we're going to have questions coming up in French. Now, to just give a little bit of, let me say, just a little brush on what Mr. Kasenge just mentioned, it is important for us to note that the Ebola has existed. It's not something for today. It's something which has existed for almost 5 decades today. And it's on its 17th episode. I'll call it that way. It's on its 17th episode right now. And a more dangerous version. Now, it's also important for us to note that in his presentation, he made mention many aspects of why the Ebola still continues to persist in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Some of the issues which he mentioned, one was security. He also made mention of the issue of misinformation. He made mention the issue of politics largely contribute in what is happening right now. We also have the issue of regional imbalance at the level of responses towards this Ebola crisis. He also mentioned the issue of aid cards, like we rightly know, and the theme of this webinar actually says it all: crisis aid cards. We know of the U.S. aid, which has completely cut ties with many African organizations as well, the CDC as well. And he also made mention of the fact that there are so many banks in the DRC which are currently not giving access to researchers like himself and many others in the country to be able to carry out more research on this very, very complicated strain of Ebola, the strain of Ebola, which till now they have not been able to find a vaccine for these. So his presentation actually highlights how conflict, insecurity, governance challenges, and declining humanitarian support continue to shape Ebola response efforts in the DRC. Now, beyond these challenges, another factor increasingly influences public health response: misinformation. Our next speaker, I would say, is Mr. Mfor Hansen Nchanji. I hope I pronounced that well. Mr. Mfor Hansen Nchanji. He is an award-winning media entrepreneur, digital strategist, and communications consultant. His work with international organizations has focused on strategic communications, conflict analysis, digital engagement, and public information. Alors, Monsieur Mfor Hansen Nchanji est un expert en communication stratégique et en médias numériques. Son travail porte notamment sur la lutte contre la désinformation et l'engagement du public dans les contextes complexes. Please join us and welcome Mr. Mfor Hansen Chanji.
Thank you so much for that powerful presentation. Yes, you got the name right, the last name, Chanji.
Thank you.
I appreciate everything and being invited here to be a speaker. It's not every day we see this kind of webinar. It's not every day we see this kind of discussion that groups people from all walks of life to discuss about what's affecting our present that will also affect our future. Yes, when Ebola and rumor crosses the border, media's power to combat misinformation and panic. So I was given kind of 4 main areas to discuss on. I decided to bring them down on what you are seeing on your screen. Let's look at the invisible problem, right? We know that the Ebola outbreak is here, and we know that the borders are there. You can see the borders when you go, you see military men, immigration officers, and all whatnot. But there is an invisible problem that is moving around. The virus and rumors spread at the same time and at the same speed. And the difference is that the virus needs a person to move, and rumor only needs a phone call or a chat in the market. And the reality at the border is that health is not really a fixed policy. It's constantly moving, right? You might meet somebody today who lives the DRC, and the person crosses over to Gabon or to Congo or to the Central African Republic, and then meets a truck driver, and then the truck driver carries that person, goes to Chad, and Chad, from there, the person will move over to Cameroon. Now, I've just called the various countries that exist before you can reach the DRC. That's if you live in the DRC to Cameroon, you pass through Gabon, either you pass through the Congo or the Central African Republic, or you pass through Chad. I would like the person in charge to put on the invisible problem. The next slide, please. So now the warning is that if we don't manage the information, we lose the fight even before it begins. Now, how is rumor therefore circulated on the Cameroonian side? I've listed these countries, as you can see on the slide. The countries where if you leave DRC, you have to pass through before you reach Cameroon. Local networks move information faster than official channels. Before authorities communicate, communities often rely on their own trusted sources, right? We always say that the government delays in sending out communication. Before the government thinks of sending out communication, we already have meeting groups, we already have friends in places far and wide who will already tell us what is happening. I'm on the second slide, please. Now let's look at the local channels, how rumor is being circulated on the Cameroonian side. You have traders. People move goods across the border. They bring news faster than any official report. Before the government thinks of, let's have a meeting, let's do this, a trader leaving DRC goes to Chad, already tells the people that, look, there is a deadly virus in DRC right now. And the person will take and spread to family and say, I just heard something happening. Please be very careful of what is happening outside. The government is still planning to do something, but the rumor is already spreading. And it spread from traders, it goes to family and friends. Phone calls, WhatsApp messages, personal contacts are often trusted more than government announcement. Somebody would trust a family relative than seeing an announcement maybe from the Minister of Health. You say, these people, they are lying. Augustine said something about how they use it to get funds. People will say, forget about these people. They are using it to get funds. It's a lie, And you also have community beliefs. When information is limited, communities may use traditional beliefs and local explanations to understand an illness or an outbreak. Let me deviate to sickle cell. Before, most communities thought that sickle cell was a kind of something that was a bewitched something, African magic and things like that. Then when we grew up now, we came to understand, so this sickness actually has a name. It actually it doesn't have a cure. It actually generates, you know what I'm talking about. So community beliefs also plays a very important role in this. Next slide, please. Now, how do we now react to all these rumors when you see a forwarded WhatsApp message, a video, somebody telling you this is happening? How do we react as a typical, African? What we do now is, if somebody has a symptom similar to what we read on the WhatsApp group, we are going to hide that person. We will say, oh, we will hide that person from the government. People hide patients because they are afraid the government will take them away. They are afraid they will be quarantined. They are afraid they will take them and go and give them some kind of medication that they don't believe in. So this, it starts taking place in families, in households, and in communities. And now people say, oh, we want to protect our tradition. They start burying their dead in sacred places to keep cultural customs, which can spread the sickness faster. All these things are done in forests, in bushes, in farmlands. The government is not aware of these things. Why? Because information circulates only within the community. They want to hide everything. So they want to avoid the rules, especially at borders. People use hidden forest paths to trade because they fear the government will stop their businesses. So if you want to cross this border, they will ask, where are you going to? There is a serious quarantine in this area, go back. And people don't think about how they are going to spread this virus. They think about how they want to advance in their businesses. So this is when we lack this official communication channel. We have this kind of reaction to the different rumors that are being circulated. Now, misinformation sets in. When this thing happens, misinformation now comes in as the main driver of everything that we are seeing. And when misinformation comes in, now rumors and misinformation that we often saw during the Ebola crisis, like Mr. Folem said, is over 5 decades. I was talking with a friend of mine from the DRC. I picked him from the airport yesterday. I now asked him, so how is everything going on there in the DRC? He wasn't really so concerned. He told me, look, we are used to it. It's something we are used to, the Ebola crisis. And then I was like, okay. So I wanted him to really say, oh, look, things are terrible. We are moving left and right. But he didn't really show me sign of that it was really too serious. And he now told me, look, there are a lot of people that are using this to make funds, and people are the media is using it to just aggravate the situation. That actually we from DRC, we know how it is, and we know when it is serious. So how, during the Ebola crisis now, many people, when it started, many people say Ebola is not real, right? We also saw it during the COVID period. People will tell you, no, this thing is not real. This is propaganda. A lot of people will say if you put salt and water, it will prevent Ebola. Health workers were spreading Ebola. That was, some of the issues that we saw. We also saw that traditional healers could curb Ebola. People prefer to go and meet traditional healers in their communities whom they know, to give them some concoctions for Ebola instead of rushing to the health centers. And they said vaccines were plot to harm Africans. We had this also during the COVID. They will tell you, if you take this, you will not be able to put to birth, you will not be able to do this, you will not be able to do that. So a lot of people, and when you hear this kind of conspiracy theories, it rings in your mind, and what happens next? You send it through many WhatsApp groups, forwarded as received. This, and that. If you do this, this will happen to you. So we saw some of this, misinformation and rumors. They also said it was a Western plot. Some people said it was a Western plot to keep down African population, that African population is growing at a geometric rate, and the people they have good natural resources, they have this and that. Africa is growing, so the West has brought this agenda, to bring us down. Some people also said there was a secret cure which is being hidden somewhere. We've seen that in some of the crises out there. They say there's a secret cure hidden somewhere, and they also say pharmaceuticals are going to just wait for time to come, and then they are going to bring in that cure, and they will make more money. Right now, Ebola victims could rise from the dead. We also saw this. When we grew up, especially in 2014, when some of us started following these things up, you will hear people say that Ebola victims could rise from the dead. So and also some people said Ebola was caused by evil spirits or witchcraft, just like I said about sickle cell. And information spread faster than the virus through radio, social media, word of mouth, and community networks. Rumors travel faster than facts, causing panic, mistrust, stigma, and of course the infection. Now, the consequences of this irresponsible reporting and misinformation are just enormous. When false information spreads, real lives are at risk. We have the collapse of institutional trust. You no more trust the health department. You don't trust the rapid intervention unit. You have resistance to containment. There's increased avoidance of medical facilities, contact tracing, safe burial practices due to fear-based information, and there's social stigmatization, widespread discrimination against survivors, their families, affected communities. If they say it's witchcraft, definitely, if that compound has somebody that had Ebola, people from this other compound, adjacent or opposite, they will start avoiding that person. Because in that community, they say, if you have Ebola, you are a wizard, or you are a witch. So all these things happen, social stigmatization. And you also have misallocation of attention, distraction from necessary health protocols towards irrational panic-driven behaviors. And you have a long-term community trauma where lingering fear and social breakdown that persists along after the immediate crisis has subsided. Now, how has the media been covering Ebola now? How has the media been covering? This is the crux of it. If we have people that spread misinformation in the other slides I've explained, now as professionals, you want to counter this. You want to stop citizen journalists from spreading all these things. You want to stop maybe activists who are just hate the government. They don't like the government's action towards it, so they want to aggravate the situation. You as a trained reporter now, how do you cover it? There has been, while I was researching on this topic, I found a lot of sensational topics, headlines in the past, and I'm going to bring it in the next slide that I saw, not in Africa, but I will demonstrate how people in Africa who believe in news networks like CNN, BBC, and others actually follow this, because sometimes they will say, we don't really trust our local media, right? So it's going to be the next slide. But now, there is sensational headlines where using alarmist, emotionally charged language that exploit fear rather than just presenting the facts, right? Speculative narrative, prioritizing the worst case scenario. You can say, for instance, 12 people died in the past 1 week. So by next week, Friday, maybe 24 people will die since 12 died past 1 week. You are just speculating to say, okay, since 12 died, you've added the figure, and giving a context vacuum, publishing infection or fatality statistics without explaining the transmission vectors, the risk factors of the preventive measures. So people are just, they just go and say 1,000 dead, this and that, but you don't really educate the people on how to prevent, how it is transmitted, and the measures that they have to take to avoid these things. And you also have dehumanizing language, such as treating victims as mere data points, which increases social anxiety and communal alienation. Like what my friend said yesterday, that look, the media is just giving alarming figures about Ebola. And you don't really find a media that would really give you some narratives about what's going on. And of course, unverified claims, amplifying rumors or social media hearsay that bypasses medical or vetting processes. In cases like this, the media is supposed to meet the right people. I'll bring this in my last slide to talk about the way forward. Now, let's move to media responsibility, how Ebola panic in America. The New York Post, October 2014. Now, I've actually researched all what you are seeing on your screen, because I know sometimes if you put something that didn't really happen, you might have some litigation. I struggle a lot. I saw some researchers that did incredible work on Sierra Leonean newspapers about the Ebola virus. But let me bring what you are watching on your screen, the ISIS of biological agents. This was an international public policy association report that brought the widespread circulation in aliens what medical unilogistic Alexander Geza, who made this comment on CNN. And I went back to look at the kind of comments he made on CNN and why did CNN actually publish that interview that he made. He said it was the ISIS of biological agents, which means that, of course, we know what ISIS is doing in the world. And then somebody comes and says, Ebola is the ISIS of biological agent. And you from DRC, or you from Cameroon, or you from other neighboring countries, you see this kind of headline. Won't you be panicked about this kind of headline? ISIS and Ebola, he likened them together. And what does these ISIS people do? They do a lot of killing and damages for their cause. Now, there was also the BBC, an academic review that I saw, where Ebola, the headline was Ebola well goes on red alert. It was on the yearly Global Health Review. There was equally, Ebola is out here. And another one, Ebola in the air, a nightmare that could happen. All these headlines created panic. And when you see this on New York Post, and you see this on BBC, somebody says the ISIS of biological agent, what do you do as an African who is back home? You trust these media organizations, you trust the BBC, you trust the CNN, and you trust these experts that come there. Definitely, you are going to be panic-stricken about what's happening. Now, what are the pillars of the responsible reporting that we can talk about? We have to verify rigorously, cross-reference all medical data with official health authorities before publication. You must, as a media person, reach out to the communication unit of the Ministry of Health, or the medical center, or the medical unit, or the chief medical center, district medical center of that place where maybe there's a quarantine or there's an outbreak, of Ebola. You have to prioritize clarity. Well, for the first one, verify rigorously. You must give authoritative sources. In this case, you can't just say that social media reports say Ebola outbreak happened here, 20 people dead, this and that, without you giving an authoritative source like the Minister of Public Health or the ministry or any certified medical center. Now, prioritize clarity. You have to utilize the inverted pyramid structure to deliver life-saving, actionable information first. I'm running out of time. You have to contextualize your facts. Always explain the how and the why behind statistics to minimize irrational fear. Also, maintain transparency, clearly distinguish between confirmed facts and ongoing investigation. Can you just say 2,000 people have died, this and that, without saying, without putting the people in fear? You can say investigations or news we've gotten from the Ministry of Public Health say at least, you can say at least maybe 15 people or 20 people are affected. We're going to bring you more on this. And unless it is not confirmed to you. But you can't just come and say 20 people have died, it's really confirmed, and this is what's happening. People should be careful about, So we have to, as media people, watch out for that. You have to empower the public, focus on hygiene, prevention, and seeking medical assistance to provide tangible pathways for safety. And above all, adopt empathetic tone, deliver information with professional gravity that respects the severity of the situation without reporting to the hyperbole. When you report to the hyperbole, you are definitely, people would read your headline and say, wow, this newspaper is really, really great. But then below that, you have fear and panic that you've created within the community. So, thank you so much.
Thank you very much once again, Mr. Amfor. Thank you very, very much. Let's put our hands together for Mr. Amfor, please. It's very important for us to highlight the fact that in his presentation, Mr. Amfor emphasized that misinformation is not simply a communication challenge, it is a public health challenge. He highlighted the importance of trusted information sources, responsible media engagement, digital literacy, and proactive communication strategies to counter rumors and build public confidence during health emergencies. I have just one question which I'm going to ask, but we are going to come to that at the end of the session. Since looking at what you just said in your presentation, we realize that there are advantages and the disadvantages as well in our today connected internet connected world when it comes to first-hand reporting or first-hand information circulation. So we're going to come back to that later. Donc, merci une fois de plus, Monsieur Chanji, pour cette présentation très pertinente. Nous retenons que la désinformation peut compromettre les efforts de lutte contre l'Ebola autant que les défis sanitaires eux-mêmes. Vous avez souligné l'importance d'une communication crédible, de médias responsables, de l'engagement des communautés et de stratégies adoptées pour renforcer la confiance du public et lutter contre les fausses informations. Donc, c'est important pour nous de mettre tout ça en pratique. Et comme je l'ai dit tout à l'heure, nous allons, à la fin de cette session, aborder une série de questions. Nous allons aborder une série de questions qui seront très importantes. Et là, nous allons revenir à notre premier intervenant. We're going to come back to all of those questions later. Now, our last, who was supposed to be our first speaker of the day, is no other person than Dr. Ekwe Agwiman. I hope I pronounced that well. I know my pronunciations these days are quite not accurate, but then I hope you don't hold me in contempt for that. Our first and last speaker, Dr. Ekwe Agwiman, is a public health and preventive medicine specialist currently serving as Chief Public Health Officer for the government of Nunavut, Canada, and Vice President of the Canadian Society for Circumpolar Health. With extensive experience in the infectious disease prevention, outbreak response, and emergency preparedness across Africa and Canada, she brings valuable insight into the factors driving Ebola persistence and the lessons we must learn from previous outbreaks. Le docteur Ekwe Agwiman est une spécialiste en santé publique et médecine préventive, reconnue pour son expertise dans la prévention des maladies infectieuses, la gestion des épidémies et la prévention aux urgences sanitaires. Ladies and gentlemen, let us welcome the Dr. Ekwe Agwiman.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. Can
You're
you
welcome.
hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation as well. I also want to thank all the prior speakers. I think they've done the bulk of the work by putting this in context. They've already spoken about the political and economic instability that's driving the Ebola crisis, and they've also given us a really in-depth view into misinformation and how that builds mistrust. So it's a really strong foundation for me to continue from here. If I can have my slides up, please. Or would you like me to share my screen? I can do that as well. Okay. And I'll probably go ahead and share my screen. So please let me know what you see. Can you let me know what you're seeing, please?
How conflict aid, curtain, misinformation are redefining Ebola? You're on track.
Okay, great. So in the short time I have with you today, I hope that we can review lessons from decades, and I think that's already been done by the previous speakers. And then we can explore why it continues to recur despite all the response efforts. And then my main point is about examining the structural, social, and cultural drivers, and then how we might facilitate, co-designing solutions together. So yes, we already aware about this. It was declared as a public health emergency of international concern. And what this meant was that what was already happening in the world, in the light of funding cuts from WHO, USAID, and CDC, this one really did hit hard. And even the time it took for the authorities to realize that this was happening, it was really scary, because this is something that should have been identified immediately. Given how quickly Ebola could spread, it should have been identified early and contained. But then again, there is also misinformation and rumors, as we heard, which spread it much further than the disease itself. So unfortunately, because other countries do not understand, whenever this happens, as we heard from the reporting side of the news, people actually also do put policies in place. And unfortunately, right now in Canada, and I believe in other places, people from Congo as well as Uganda are not even allowed into the country until the next 90 days. And there are even stricter measures in other countries, right? And that shouldn't be the response. But then, because we don't understand it, as soon as we hear that something is a public health emergency of international concern, given the trauma and the post-traumatic stress, response from COVID, people quickly come together, and then sometimes our response and reactions are extreme. So right now we do have enhanced border screening measures at all our ports, and I believe it's similar in other countries as well. And there's also the economic and humanitarian impact, even for, say, people who work with Doctors Without Borders and all that. There's implications for them if they go to a DRC or to Uganda, to any of the other countries. They would have to isolate for 21 days when they return. It's going to impact their lives here. So even the ability to come to respond and support some of the efforts happening there might be impacted. Then when we look at the medical countermeasures, we know that for this particular strain of Ebola, there's really no vaccine and no treatment as well. But that in itself makes it really concerning. And the WHO also is prioritizing several therapeutic vaccines and right now trying to expedite it, but we know how that works, right? The advanced countries do expedite it and then hold that in case somebody gets it in their countries. It's not like it's just to bring it that quickly down to Africa to those who really need it, but hopefully we are able to get a solution for this one soon. But then in the face of no true vaccine and no true treatment, what else can be done? And I think that, again, our prior speakers talking about the cultural perspective, they really did go in depth into that. So what is the question? Why is it not just a biomedical problem? Why are we seeing outbreaks again and again? Then this is the 17th one. And why are we still having outbreaks despite everything else that is happening? Maybe misinformation, yes. We can blame it on weak healthcare systems or governance and leadership. We can blame it on civil unrest. But then it's really more than that. we, as the first speaker, I know it was in French and most people probably did not understand, but from what I understood from the first speaker, if people are displaced, having to go from place to place, if people are really concerned about the food they are eating, the water they are drinking, where they are sleeping, if people are concerned that if they sleep, will they even wake up alive or they'll be attacked in the night, then the least of their worries is Ebola. If people cannot find food to eat, then they would eat animals that they know could give them Ebola because that is the only source of sustenance. So just think about Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if that is familiar to you. If your basic physiological needs are not met, you cannot be thinking about even safety or even ideal situations like self-actualization. And I believe those are some of the drivers that are really driving this Ebola outbreak and recurrence. And you back home in Africa will probably be much more familiar with that than I am here. Another thing is that we wait for it to happen and we do our emergency response and nothing happens in between. So having that knee-jerk reaction whenever this happens, pumping maybe a bit of funding, send humanitarian workers, and then afterwards nothing happens. That is not sustainable. What is sustainable is putting in structures in place, strengthening systems so that they can be resilient and they can respond on their own. So I believe that these factors are already familiar to us, but again, working it up to my point, how might we work together to build trust? Because change really does happen at the speed of trust. As we've heard again and again, if people are not trusting the government, people are not trusting the authorities and the experts, then whatever comes up is going to be construed. That is how we get all these, theories, conspiracy theories flowing around. And unfortunately, sometimes some recommendations that could be really helpful, like isolation and change in cultural and social practices that can slow down or reduce the spread, it's overlooked because we do not trust where it's coming from. And how do we build trust? Through relationships, through respect. And I feel like that is really lacking. It's always, okay, WHO is bringing this, but what about the people? And maybe the answer lies with the people. It's in social prescribing. Are people really concerned about Ebola? I don't know. Maybe when we get to the questions and answer period, people can let us know the temperature in their various communities. But I spoke to a friend who comes from DRC, and I was just asking her, how is the situation back home and your family members? She was like, nobody cares about Ebola. It's been there for years, and people think that it's a spiritual attack and that it's So if you think that is a spiritual attack and you don't even believe in spirits and all that, then you wouldn't take precautions. And again, how can we come to the point where we are really addressing these things? Because until we can build trust with the people, help them to see that this really is an illness and you do have some level of agency in this. You have some power and ability to be able to stop this at the local level. I don't think that that's going to happen. So again, when we come to our discussion period, I really will be interested in hearing from you. How might we co-design social-cultural dynamics with the people when it comes to practices like traditional burial practices, caregiving within households, community gatherings, and who is not at the table when it comes to decision-making and policies around Ebola, who should be at the table when it comes to these, and how can we really work together, because it's not about being an expert or having the power because you have the funds. It's really about the people and communities. And I think up until now, some of the perception coming out is communities are the problem. When we talk about misinformation, we talk about, people burying their dead in secret or hiding the sick. But then, can we go beyond why are people doing these things to address that? Because people are people, human beings, this is human nature, and it will continue to happen until we are addressing the core issue, which is, again, trust, giving people that agency. But again, how can all that happen in the presence of cultural unrest and civil unrest, military attacks and all that? So I believe that I'm probably preaching to the choir here because you all are aware of this. But again, really getting about, thankfully, I see the updates coming in every day. And now we have about almost more than 10 people who have recovered. So how can we say engage survivors so that they can talk about this that is real, so that people can protect themselves? Maybe it's not just about the ministers of health and even the physicians, but community leaders or even church leaders or traditional leaders or family heads and people coming together saying that this is what we want to do. We want to keep our communities safe. Here in Canada, I work sometimes with some rural communities and groups who do not believe in vaccine. So it's not, only in Africa that you have these theories. There are groups of people whose lives are totally, completely wrapped around some of these beliefs. And yet we have to work with them. Say we have a measles outbreak and they don't believe in taking the measles vaccine. The whole community, nobody takes it. But then you approach the leadership of the community and help them to understand that this is a solution. This is the problem, and this is what you can do. And these are other options, right? So if we understand, maybe based on your beliefs, you are not going to take the vaccine, but then these are the signs and symptoms of measles. And if you realize that one person has it, you need to isolate the person, quarantine the person, make sure people do not come into contact. And then this is the incubation period. Therefore, anybody who came into contact with this person within this time period might be exposed. Once we sit down, we do these explanations and give them other options. They themselves are able to, look out for signs and symptoms, quickly isolate people so that even when they have a case, it's quickly contained. And maybe that is how we need to approach the situation. People have their beliefs and we cannot expect them to undo some of these beliefs because that is what really keeps them going. But until they come to the place where they are able to understand and be of the same understanding, how can we meet people where they are? How can we give them options to keep themselves and their families safe? So looking forward, I believe that it's really important when you look at the emergency cycle, it starts with preparedness and then it goes to mitigation and you respond when there's an emergency and then there's a recovery period. So we really need to engage all the 4 pillars of emergency response, not just responding, but then really putting a lot of effort and investments into preparedness and mitigation so that should Ebola happen again, another strain happening, then we can quickly respond, but much more importantly, we can recover and in that recovery phase, be able to quickly go back to how things are supposed to be. So there is also structural and systemic design that needs to happen if the healthcare system is not set up to respond effectively, if the system, governance system, leadership system, even cultural and communities are not set up and empowered to respond appropriately, then when this happens, again, rumors and misinformation is going to drive it. But then if we have protocols in place, processes, procedures, Everyone, stakeholders and interest holders who need to be at the table are invited, and they are clear about their roles, the scope and the function that they bring to the table. Even the ordinary person know what part they can play. Then when it happens, we can have a really robust response. So again, invest in building trust through radical collaboration. And I'll just keep stressing that again. It's really a collaborative effort that can bring a lasting end to this. It's not about any department or even any country or any group of people. It's about a collaboration. For instance, thankfully Ebola is just contact droplets, it's not airborne. If Ebola was airborne like COVID, it would probably spread much further than it is right now, and everybody else would be affected. I believe like COVID, when it started, we're thinking that it was just in China and wasn't a problem. But before we realized, it became everybody's problem. So it's really important that everyone is brought to the table and their views are respected. And we are given that opportunity to collaborate radically. And again, going back to social prescribing, what are communities doing? Can we empower communities to come up with solutions by themselves, for themselves? Because up until now, when it comes to Ebola, it's all, higher powers and advanced doing things for or to people, but it's not with them, or we are not even empowering them to do it by themselves. And so, honestly, I don't know how this would work. And that is how I hope that during the discussion time, we can bring some of these thoughts out and see how in our own small way, wherever we find ourselves, as we have about 33 or so people here today, how each and every one of us in our own small way can contribute to this issue. So thank you very much. And I really do appreciate your time and your kind attention. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and pass it over to the moderators. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Please put your hands together for Doctor, please. Thank you so very much. It was a very seamless yet impactful and powerful presentation. We thank you very much. Merci le docteur Agoueman pour cette présentation enrichissante. Nous retenons notamment l'importance de la confiance communautaire, de l'engagement local et de la solution durable pour lutter efficacement contre l'Ebola. Nous allons passer à une phase des questions, mais avant cela, I would first of all like to thank all of you. And together, our three speakers have highlighted the interconnected role of public health, governance, community trust, and communication in responding effectively to Ebola outbreak. Donc, ensemble, nos trois intervenants ont montré que la lutte contre l'Ebola repose non seulement sur le système ou bien sur les systèmes de santé, mais aussi sur la gouvernance, la confiance des communautés et une communication efficace. Now, we're going to move to our question and answer session. But before we move to the question and answer session, I have one particular question which I'm going to ask. This question goes to all three. It goes to all three speakers. We're going to give them each 2 minutes to 1 minute, please, not 2 minutes. We're going to give them each 1 minute to respond to that before we now open the session for questions from our audience. So thank you guys very much for that. Now, the question which I would like to ask is, to what extent is the challenge of Ebola response today a public health problem? And to what extent is it a crisis of trust? To what extent is the challenge of Ebola response today a public health problem, and to what extent is it a crisis of trust? Dans quelle mesure la lutte contre Ebola est-elle aujourd'hui un défi sanitaire et dans quelle mesure s'agit-il d'une crise de confiance? I'm going to start with Mr. Hansen. If you're right there, Mr. Hansen, please.
Yeah, that's a very technical question. If we are talking of crisis, loss of trust, a crisis of trust is technical, multidimensional. Loss of trust in the government, loss of trust in the entire system, loss of trust in the foreign donors, loss of trust in other foreign regional bodies, and loss of trust in big powers. Why? Because people today think that all of these things are coming up because people want to enrich their pocket. By the way, we've seen after every crisis, we hear cases of corruption, right? So if cases of corruption and embezzlement, people who are arrested of having siphoned money that was meant to fight a crisis, a health crisis, during another crisis, the people would definitely say that you guys have just invented this thing so that you can siphon money again. So in this scenario, people no longer trust the government. People no longer trust the system. And when you don't trust the system, you don't respect what the system says. You tend to community leaders, you tend to community belief and do what that community says or what your pastor, your religious leader says. And by so doing, this loss of trust will not only affect you as a person, it affects the entire community and also affects the government machinery that has been put in place. That's why the government will tell you that, look, we've put in place a whole lot of things, rapid response unit, but things are not working. So why are things not working? It is because of that loss of trust. People don't respect, people don't follow what the government says because there's no more trust.
All right, thank you so very much. Thank you. Please put your hands together for Mr. Mfode. That's a very brilliant answer. Thank you very much, Mr. Mfode. D'accord, nous allons passer à notre rechercheur ou bien notre chercheur international, Monsieur Kazenge. Je vous passe la parole pour répondre à cette question résumée en 1 minute en fait. Dans quelle mesure la lutte contre l'Ebola est-elle aujourd'hui un défi sanitaire? Et dans quelle mesure s'agit-il d'une crise de confiance?
Oui, merci beaucoup. La lutte contre Ebola reste un défi sanitaire parce que il s'agit d'un problème qui touche les Congolais et qui nous ravisse des êtres chers. Malheureusement, ce qui accentue cela, c'est par rapport aussi au comportement communautaire, parce que l'épidémie, il y a déjà des protocoles qui sont toujours donnés pour s'en préserver. Et souvent, ce n'est pas le cas malheureusement. Et puis, comme on a eu à le dire, il y a on y investit moins de fonds que possible. Et pourtant, c'est une question qui décime des communautés. Ça, c'est au niveau du défi sanitaire. Je ne vais pas revenir sur ce qu'on a dit par rapport à la déficience des structures sanitaires ou les systèmes sanitaires qui demanderaient plus d'être renforcés. Mais mesures de confiance, crise de confiance, oui. Le deuxième intervenant est revenu là en montrant suffisamment que pour vaincre une épidémie ou Ebola, il faut beaucoup plus travailler sur l'information. C'est ce qu'on appelait infodémie, parce que si on fait passer une bonne information et lorsque celui qui fait passer l'information inspire confiance, à travers un engagement communautaire sérieux et bien pensé, je pense que c'est à ce niveau-là. C'est lorsqu'on manque vraiment cette capacité d'attirer et de faire preuve de confiance, c'est là que ça devient vraiment une crise de confiance. Merci.
Ok, merci beaucoup. Les applaudissements pour Monsieur Kazenge. Vraiment, c'est une intervention très importante. Nous apprécions vraiment beaucoup. Je vais donc passer la parole au docteur Ekwa Guillemant. Docteur, j'imagine que vous parlez en français ou en anglais. Voyons que vous êtes au Canada. Et bon, je ne sais pas si vous êtes dans une ville strictement anglo-saxonne ou bien vous êtes dans une ville franco-saxonne. Mais là, la question qui se pose, ou bien je dois revenir en anglais. To what extent is the challenge of Ebola response today a public health problem? And to what extent is it a crisis of trust? In 1 minute, please.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. So public health is protecting the health of the population, preventing diseases, promoting and prolonging lives. So when you look at Ebola, it does check all these boxes. So definitely it is a public health concern. But then the question is it an individual? Where does, the individual rights come in and then the good of the whole population come in? I think that's what the actual question is with regards to Ebola, because then we can talk about people have choices and their beliefs and what they want to do. But when it comes to public health, because it's a public health concern, it's about the good of the whole population. So then thinking about the good of the whole population, it trumps even one individual's liberty. That is how come it's being addressed this way. We are asking people to isolate and asking people to, not bury their dead in the way that they always have done. But then there is also the ethics of it. It should be reciprocal. If you are asking such things of people, what are you offering in return? Right? And that is where trust comes in. So how can we agree that this is what we want to do and it's not a hands down, top down, sledgehammer response where we are putting all these restrictions on people and then they have no say in it. I believe that there should be a place for negotiation and understanding agreement, and that can only happen with trust. So it is a problem of trust, but much more importantly, a public health concern.
All right, thank you very much, Doctor. We appreciate you very much. Let's put our hands together for Doctor one last time before we come back to her personal interventions. Thank you very much, Doctor. Now, we are going to open the chat now for a couple of questions. We are going to have about 15 minutes to ask questions. And please, I would like us to ask our questions orderly so that we can also proceed in an orderly manner. So the chats are open. My co-moderator is going to open the mics too. Let's see. We have about 15 minutes to carry that exercise out. All right. Any questions, please? Let's jump into that section right now. If you have any questions, just drop them in the chat room, and I will ask the question to the person involved. No question? I want to believe that all our participants here today are not silent.
Mr. Emmanuel, most of the questions are already in the chat box. There's one from Mr. Alan Ernest. We're saying, currently conducting a systematic review on HIP misinformation in Africa. How do we curb misinformation, especially on social media? And in our local communities, misinformation mainly spread through Njanji houses, women groups, marketplaces, in our homes. During fireside story, can evidence-based storytelling curb misinformation? I think this goes to Mr. Hansen.
Okay. So it's talking about how to help this misinformation. I'm sure in my presentation, I spoke about how reporters can try to avoid all these sensational headlines and hit the nail on the head. But I guess his question now it goes broadly about community. and how this misinformation can be kept. First and foremost is that in my presentation, I spoke about community, I spoke about community leaders. So the government has to open communication channels. They have to establish this. It's not a rocket science. There must be an establishment of official communication channels that will meet the need of the people. And how will they meet the need of the people? They have to partner with local leaders. They have to partner with religious leaders. They have to partner with traditional rulers or local chiefs, in order to open this communication channel. Because these communities listen more to their local leaders than the government. When you partner with them, you are working with them as an intermediary between you and the population. And the population now will not get instructions from them. And then they will now say, okay, this is coming from this leader. It means this is true. Because people tend not to give the government a listening ear. Also, as a government or maybe a disease control and prevention center, you have to leverage the platforms that are being used by the people spreading this misinformation. If they are spreading misinformation, let's say, for instance, in Cameroon, where you have more than 5 million people who are active on Facebook, you definitely have to use Facebook in order to pass on your information or to counteract this. You must use it. If you don't use it, it means you have not touched the core of the people who are on social media. And also WhatsApp now, which has become a more larger platform that almost everyone is using. You have to use WhatsApp in order to, send this communication into. So which means these community leaders will use these platforms, and you are also going to engage yourself in video production, pictures, and then, share them on this platform. Also, you have to implement a community engagement education, town hall meetings, calling people together to come and talk, discussion on some of the issues that people are talking about that are not true, and you have to promote digital literacy. 2 days ago, I posted something on my status to say that very soon, most of these our mothers are going to will start understanding that not everything that is shared in WhatsApp groups is true because of AI. So if somebody is not digitally literate, and you find an AI generated picture or image or video of somebody, and you share in WhatsApp groups, you share to your family members, you tell the person this is what happened and this is what is going on, and you people should be very careful, extremely careful what's happening around you. Meanwhile, that was just an AI generated picture. So if the government does not engage the community leaders to involve in digital literacy, they are going to be throwing water on the duck's back.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for that kind intervention. Now, the next question is going to still to Mr. Hansen. Unfortunately, you're going to be here for quite a moment. As Mr. Hansen described the question of trust, that the question of trust is a technical one, is there any way the question should specify in order so that one can give a response or present his or her question to? Well, that's kind of I didn't quite get that question. Please, Ariki Pundro, please, I would like you to rephrase your question, please, while we take the next question. In the meantime, please, you can rephrase your question so it facilitates understanding. Mr. Eben, Mr. or Mrs. Eben, how do we ensure that health misinformation is curbed even before it becomes widespread, especially on social media? Still to you, Mr. Hansen.
I think I've already said this. You have to establish an official, trusted communication channels that will have proactive messages that will come from health agencies, will come from the Ministry of Public Health, will come from health units, and you have to establish a community trusted messengers. And this can be partners, like I said, local partners, people who you have established this trust with, and they are going to be discussing with official government bodies concerning this. There are a lot of, you can also do that in multi languages, because we have different languages. In Cameroon, I think 250 something. In Nigeria, over like 1,000. If you establish some of these proactive messages in these languages, you will be going closer to the people than you sitting in your air-conditioned office and sending an official press release. Oh, Ebola is out, people should be careful. You have not done any communication. And you think that maybe your unit has done something. So you must be proactive about these messages.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the participants. Thank you to all the speakers. As we conclude today's discussion, one message stands out clearly. Ebola is not only a health challenge, it's a challenge of trust, communication, governance, and community engagement. Alors que nous arrivons à la fin de ce webinaire, retenons que l'Ebola n'est pas uniquement un défi sanitaire, c'est également un défi de confiance, de communication, de gouvernance et de l'engagement communautaire. We would like to thank you guys once again. Thank you. Thank you all once again, those who took our time to participate, the speakers, Dr. Ikwe, Mr. Hansen, and Mr. Kazenge. Thank you guys very much. And to all those who connected from all corners of the world, we sincerely appreciate you guys. Apparently, there is a different, as we continue in the different sessions. I hope those who are coming in for the first time, this is not going to be your last session joining. There are so many other sessions which are going to be communicated as time goes on. So please always make sure you check on the different releases. I will pass over the mic to Rosalind. Thank you guys very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Emmanuel, for moderating and managing the session. A perfect and delightful gratitude to our speakers to give us information on how to macro-manage the situation about Ebola, what kind of conflicts, the kind of aid cuts, the community beliefs, geopolitics, as well as misinformation has a certain level of impact regarding to the response in DRC. As Mr. Emmanuel had said, that we have continuous and upcoming sessions. So please be delighted to join us on our website session on the 26th of June. We are going to talk about teaching for views, how social media and the emerging digital risks in the African classrooms. So be observant for our social media platforms. Please do like, subscribe, and follow our YouTube channel, which is at Real Life Research Institute. So thank you everyone for joining our session. Please have a delightful day. And we're looking forward to seeing you on the 26th of June. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys, and stay blessed.
Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup.
Je vous en prie.